How's everybody doing this morning?
Great.
Good. So, my name is Dean Thomas, and I've been selling real estate. I'm celebrating something this month, you guys. It's 40 years in the real estate business. And I got my real estate, my license in 1979 was when I was a senior in Redondo High School. And it'll be July of 2019 will be 40 years. And something that to me is a bit significant with this is I started working in a real estate company in 1977, which was my father's company. Went from Carl's Jr.'s to an assistant real estate company, right? So we have a little bit of experience, and I have a goal here today is to help people tap in to increasing their production. I mean, we're all realtors. We want to increase our production, and then on the other hand, we actually purchase properties ourselves, investment properties ourselves, and doing a simple and yet full analysis that doesn't take a lot of time is just important for us to put into our program. So thanks for having me here. And I have an associate here, Eric Conrad. Eric Claudio. Excuse me, Eric. Eric Conrad's a different associate. Eric has been working with me for about a year and a half now. He's been licensed for 3 years, got his license when he was 18 years old as well. And I've been teaching Eric and everybody at my company about presentation. Your presentation is everything when you're talking to a homeowner, an investor, whoever you're dealing with. Primarily, I'm going to be talking about investors today. But presentation is absolutely everything. In fact, yesterday, who's been to this class before that I've done? Okay, who's been to it more than once? Raise your hand. There's a couple of people I've seen here multiple times. So when I tell you that I've been licensed since 1979, Eric, let's go to the next slide for a minute. Okay, so when I tell you guys that I've been licensed since 1979, I'm 58 years old, but that's a long time, and I do things sort of old school still. And yet my company is eReal Estate Corporation, and we try to keep new school, but I still have some old school ways about myself. So I did the presentation again, and it emulated what I've done the last 4 years here. Because this is, when I was in the business for 36 years, I decided, I got to start teaching that one class at the board a year, because I've never ran for a board position. I just feel like, hey, let's go back and give some of that experience back. So I had the presentation, I was tweaking it a little bit, and I said, Eric, send this to Nikki. And very sharply he said to me, Dean, I can make this better. This is what you've been doing the last couple of years. I can make this presentation better. And I stepped back for a moment, and I had this sort of like, wow, he's getting it. If you can do it better, do it better. Always. That will increase your business like you don't even know. So when I had a deadline to get this out, I called up Nikki, and I said, Nikki, I know it's the last day, and I'm sort of the last day because I'm busy often. Nikki, I need 30 more minutes because we're going to make this a little bit better. And then Eric tweaked it, and now the presentation is like 5 times better, 8 times better than it was last year. And we tweaked it a little bit. He said, Dean, this is too old school. Let's make it new school. So just remember, you guys, we always can do better, and we want to excel at all of what we do, especially our presentations. When you're meeting an investor or a homeowner, when you're meeting a client, you get one shot, and then you leave them with your presentation. So the question is, what are you leaving them with, right? Okay, so I'm a partner at eReal Estate Corporation and Value Mortgage. We used to have a company, Bayside Properties, from 1996 to 2009, and it got to be over 50 agents, and it was a bit cumbersome for us. The real estate production for me personally went down, but I had more people at my company, but my production was down, and I'm all about real estate production. So we started a new company, eReal Estate Corporation, in 2012. We've been open now for 7 years. Value Mortgage, Inc. has been in business since 1996. We specialize at Value Mortgage, Inc. in private party loans. We'll do some commercial loans once in a while, but private party loans is our niche at Value Mortgage. I started that in 1996 because after selling real estate for 20 years, the key to selling a lot of real estate is knowing where the money is. And if you know where the money is, and you can get your clients the money, it makes it easier for them to say yes. So when I started Value Mortgage, it was all about finding out where the money is, So my investors can have the best resources, goes like that. Okay, 40 years obtaining real estate. So selling real estate, a lot of transactions. I think this is important here. So I learned something. I used to sell properties back in, I'm going to say, the late 80s and early 90s. I worked at RE/MAX, and there were a lot of agents at the Manhattan Beach office that were solely dealing with new developers. And these guys were selling 3, 4, 5 homes a month, right? And I was impressed. I was 27 years old, and I was impressed, right? And after being around that for a little bit, I began to understand why they were doing so much volume, right? And that I'm going to share a little bit with you on how to succeed with that. But since, I'm going to say since 1998, I've been involved with personally over 150 new homes or development projects and flips properties in the South Bay. Currently, we have 9 new homes under development. That's either I'm a participant in that or it's my client. I only participate when I think it's really like not a lot of work for me, right? Because otherwise, you know, when you're building a home, you're responsible for making everything square. And if you understand what that means, a square is perfect. So you're responsible for that, and you're not the one doing it. So it creates a bit of an issue here. So we have several new properties under development right now. And I mentioned to you my personal goals today is the same as it was 35 years ago, is to do more volume, increase my volume every year, right? So this is a brief introduction of myself. Now let's go to the next slide. Okay, so I mentioned to you that presentation is everything. So I get so many emails because if we don't have a buyer for a property, and if you found a really good investment, a really good one, and said, I don't have anybody to sell this to, you have to think that through for a minute. Because your buyers are right here in this room. If you don't have your own clients that will do it. Right? You guys follow me on that, right? You guys call me up and say, hey, I got a great buy. I don't have a buyer for it. Let's work something. Okay, I have a buyer for it. So we can put something together. So just think about that for a minute, right? Okay, so when you find a profitable investment, you have to have, and you have to have a buyer or investor, and then you have to give them the information for them to say why. Why am I going to do this? Why am I going to think about this for more than 15 minutes? Because people are always very busy, right? So, I'm going to answer some questions in a few, right? I'll start, as I go through each slide, I'll ask them questions, okay? But getting your investors' attention is critical. Now, a lot of people know that personally, me, I have buyers that will buy investment real estate and agents. If they have a good buy, they'll contact me and they'll email me an address and say, this is a good buy, and send an address. Or it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in Hawthorne or Lawndale or Hermosa, wherever the heck it's at. This is a good buy. Do you know how much time I give that?
0.
Maybe 2 minutes. Maybe just look at it and say, what's the address? You don't even have a price on what they'll sell for. This is a good buy. With an address. And like, you guys, if you send out one of those to your investors, like, what the heck is that? You can drive down the street and see an old house and say, that's a good buy. You guys get me, right?
Yeah.
So when you send something to somebody, it's a representation of yourself, but more importantly, you want to sell the investor real estate, or if you're the buyer, you need to analyze it. Let's take that a step further. Do you analyze it before you send it to the investor? 100%. Because once you know I asked a young person the other day, because I'm getting older now, I asked a young person about 20 years old, I said, do you guys still know the story about the boy who cried wolf? Because I don't know if it's still popular anymore. But you guys all know that. The guy kept crying wolf and no one listened to him anymore. So if you say, I have a good investment, I have a good investment, I have a good investment, and there's nothing to back it up and it's not a good investment, then you're going to have that boy who cried wolf syndrome, right? So I'm gonna show you guys a simple format that works for all investment property, or I'm gonna say not for all, but for most. Create a simple format, easy to understand, including improvement cost, acquisition summary, financial analysis. It's simple, but we have to have it to get our clients' attention, so when they, it's the why do I want to do this, right? An itemized detailed report, and then detailed realistic comparable analysis. So let's think this through for a minute. We're going to call our investor up, or we're going to send them an email saying this is a good buy. It's worth $1.5 million. I think you could resell it for $1.9 million. Why do you think I could sell it for $1.9 million? Right? So if we're not thorough in our comparable analysis when we're sending in everything else, so it's a no-brainer, because these 7 homes sold for that much. That's the why. So in details on it, right? And you guys all have copies of this, right? So, you know, just to take it home with you. Professional financial summary of investment. Now, you're going to see that I literally have this in like 3 pages. All of that stuff. Simple. And what's even more interesting is now I just have to input the numbers and change things. Right? Okay. Let's go to the next page. Now, before I go through this first analysis, does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
Can you define what a profitable investment is?
What's your name?
Sunil.
Huh?
Sunil?
Sunil. A profitable investment, we will find out whether they're profitable or not when we're looking at this scenario. But
with 5 bullet points, like 5 items that you look
yeah,
at.
well, yeah, we will answer that, and you're going to see that. So the reason why it's a hard question to answer. See, we all have unrealistic clients. They want to make double their money, 200%, 300% of their money. It's not realistic. If somebody's making 15 to 30% of their money, it's pretty good. If they're making 35%, 40%, very good. And in fact, if you show people how to make 30%, 25% of their money, guess what they want to do? They're going to call you up and say, you have any more? I got guys calling me, come on man, I need something. I'm like, cool. I mean, that's what we want to set up, right? But so I'm gonna talk about for a minute how I have put together a financial report that will work for flips. It will work for new development. It doesn't work so much for large apartment buildings or commercial properties when you're looking at the rent outs. It will show you how much it's going to cost to develop it. But if you're going to do a long-term hold, or someone's buying a 30-unit apartment building, they're looking at cap rates, they're looking at expenses, they're looking at completely different numbers. So this doesn't necessarily work for that situation, but you can Google spreadsheets that will give you that information, or if you send me an email later on in the class, I'll get you one for an apartment building, right? But let's walk through this for a minute. 2 years ago, I have 2 clients that bought 2 development properties, one in Hermosa Beach and one in Redondo Beach. Now, the property in South Redondo, these escrows are closing literally in 3 weeks. And I sold them the property 2 years ago. Right? So when I sold them the property, what's interesting is for every property that I have that I sell to investors, I have one of these spreadsheets, 95%. So I'm able to go back and say, what did we project and what did we get? Right? Because, you know, everybody, our clients always like to say, I didn't make that much money, I didn't make that much money, it cost me more, Well, the numbers don't lie, right? So on this scenario, there was a property that my client bought on El Redondo in Redondo Beach 2 years ago for $1.3 million acquisition cost, $1.335 million, right? So what I do is I always give a range of 3 sales prices when I'm doing this, and I give a range of cost per square foot to build. So on the simple analysis here, I said when they bought the property that you're going to sell these properties for $1.750 million, $1.850 million, or $1.950 million. That was a safe enough range based on the comps that were around. So when you have the land acquisition cost, now we've got the sales prices, then you see right here it says vertical per square foot, and you guys have all of these. This is a slide number. What slide number is this, Eric?
This is, I believe, 5.
Maybe page 5 we might be on if you guys are following on there, right? So right here where it says cost of construction, I did 2 analyses on this project. I did one for $220 a foot, which will be the next page, and I did this one at $250 a foot. Right? So we get to look at if it costs $220 a foot, this is how much you make. If it costs $250 a foot, this is how much we make. Right? 2,800 square feet, $250 a foot, 2 units. Closing cost 4.5% commission. And now I'm going to talk about commission for a minute. I'm an agent who, if I don't get paid when I close the transaction when they buy the property, I usually don't do it. I take it to a different investor. A lot of agents get paid not when they sell the property, but get paid when the property sells. So that's your choice as a realtor, as a businessman, but my experience has been markets change, things change, right? It costs us money to go out and really find good investment properties all the time. So what I do is I get my full commission when they buy it, and then I give them a small commission reduction when I sell it. I do it for 4.5%, give the agent 2.5%, and I get 2% on the way out, right? But 2% of 2 homes at $1,850,000, that's $70,000 on the way out. Plus you made $25,000 or $30,000 when they bought it. Okay, so going back to sales cost, construction cost, land acquisition cost, commissions in here. I don't put in the interest for financing the project because I find that a lot of people pay cash. And if they're going to finance the project, they can take how much they have into it and multiply it by 4%, or multiply it by 8%, or multiply it by 6%, and see what the interest cost is going to be. Right? So, so on this, based on $250 a foot and 2,800 square feet, if they sold for $1,750,000 each, that means the profit margin was $825,000 after commissions and escrow and title. If they sold for $1,850,000 each, the profits were $1 million. Now at the bottom you have a percentage right there, 32%, 40%. That's assuming they're paying cash. And that's basically what these sold for. Now I can't tell you the exact price, but I can tell you this, one of the units sold for more than this. Right? So they were definitely somewhere in this arena in profits. Now, it just so happens that this developer, one second, Peter, or Nick, I'm sorry. It just so happens with the developer, you guys, closing 6 escrows with them. During the last, I closed 4 escrows with them in the last 30 days and 3 more in the next 30 days. So they're happy as a lark. I'm happy as a lark. Sometimes I get asked the question, why don't you just build them yourself? I did that for 10 years. So my business model right now is put development projects together, do one once in a while, because if my clients are making this kind of revenue, they want to do it again and again and again, right? And then if you have a few people that are doing this, like, you know, some people like to specialize in Redondo, some like Hermosa Manhattan, some like Torrance. So just sort of build your network of these type of developers. And I'm telling you, the business, when your clients are making this kind of revenue, is actually quite enjoyable, right? And it's repetitive. There's a statistic that I learned at a very young age. I was like, I don't know, 27 years old, 26 years old. And I heard that the average Californian sells their house every 4.8 years. Now that's not true in the South Bay. It's like every 8 years in the South Bay. So let's think about that for a minute. If I always tell the agents at my office, the client you sold property to is very important, but the new person you haven't met yet is as equal importance or more. Because if a person sells their property once every 8 years, then that means that person is going to do business with you once every 8 years. If you end up getting a listing on that house in 8 years, which is doing a lot of footwork. So, you know, so that's when at that young age I go, you know, I'm going to deal with investors and homeowners, because the homeowners are the investors. Yeah, everybody gets that, right? The homeowners are the investors, so you actually are doing a double. You have 2 good clients in one, right? Be certain that everybody likes to, that's in the real estate business, likes to make money, right? And it's up to us as realtors to do the proper analysis to show them, because when I'm sending the presentation to my client, should I send them all the menage first, or should I send them that? That's the first page. This is why you should read the rest. Everybody follow me on that, right? Okay, let's go to the next one.
Why is only 6 months rent on
What is the 6 months rent?
What are you talking about?
Up on top,
Upper-
where it says, under gross sales, it says 6 months, right?
Oh, that's because there was a tenant occupying the property when they closed the escrow.
Okay.
That was revenue coming in while that particular transaction was put together.
Are you using 6 months as a placeholder? Is that roughly how long the permits?
No, this was like, the next one won't have this. Oh, it might, I mean, but the point is when we're showing our clients the income, the profits, we have to count all the income. And if you're buying like the one in Hermosa Beach we just closed last week, there was a duplex there. So we had income coming in from a duplex, which certainly offsets the cost, right? But good question, good grab there. It was, but on this particular property, that was what? In fact, we gave the owner occupant a 6-month lease, and they paid in advance when we closed the escrow. So that was income coming in. Okay, yes?
How do you keep a handle on the dollars per square foot, the cost per square foot
Well,
in the different cities and that?
this is interesting, and I'm gonna address this as we go on, but it's very complex in that you guys know where Golden Hills is at, area 154. If you have a flat lot in Golden Hills, that's a rectangle box you're building. It's a rectangle box. Now, if anybody went and saw the homes that we built on First Place in Hermosa Beach with the elevators down 10 feet into the ground, blah, 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 that's a complex nightmare, right? So that's a difference between $220 a foot and $350 a foot, $320 a foot, right? Go to the next slide, Eric. This is the same property in Redondo Beach that I gave them the sensitivity analysis. The other one was at $250 a foot. This was at $220 a foot. So if they were to build it at $220, these were the profit margins.
It's backwards.
And they were actually closer to $220 a foot than they were $250 a foot on El Redondo, right? So let's go to Hermosa, let's go to the next one. Now, this was really an interesting analysis right here, you guys. Because sometimes in real estate, I'm gonna share with you something. The most difficult time in my career was 1983 through 1985. Interest rates went from 11, so I never understood anything below 9% when I got in the business in 1979, because they were never that low for me. So they were always 9, 10, 11, and then in 83, 84, 85, 16, 18 VA loans were 19%. So when we look at very difficult markets to sell in, forget about what the prices are of the homes. If our rates went to 12% now, we're at 4%. That means the cost of the home is triple. That's a difficult market. That's where you start learning about creative financing, right? Land contracts, lease options, all-inclusive trust deeds, all that kind of stuff. But let's go to this. This is a Hermosa Beach analysis, true analysis, you guys, that I gave my client. The other one was $225 a foot, and this one was $275 a foot, right? And at $275 a foot, which we thought, not in a million years is it going to cost $275 a foot. But you guys, materials have gone up 25% in the last 2 years, 2.5 years, right? So these things that you're not projecting, and I told you this Hermosa Beach property, we dug down 8 feet to get the parking, and it was a difficult task. So this was my projection when they bought the property. Well, I was off in 2 arenas, and it's not my job to tell them what cost per square foot they can build for. That's their job, they're the builder. They're buying the steel, they're doing the elevators, I'm giving them sample analysis that's close, right? So they agreed it's not gonna cost us more than $275 a foot. It's actually like $330 a foot to build. So you can see that at $1,850,000, which is the center line value there, at $275 a foot, which they thought was a no-brainer, that was $661 in profit. That's the minimum my client would ever consider, $661 on a project. When you said, what's the good value? Because if the property, if it drops 10% values, that project still makes $100 grand. You see what I'm saying? So you have to be ready for a 10% offset in cost, and this does that. Interestingly enough, the price I told you guys was $330 a foot. The sales price were $2,450,000 and $2,400,000. So as the cost per square foot went up, this was an extra $650 net. and the other one was one was 400,000 higher, the other one was 6. That was an extra $1 million in the sales price. So fortunately, the client wasn't as disappointed as they would have been if it cost $330 a foot, because if it was $330 a foot, they wouldn't have made anything. But the up in value, or my conservative approach to estimating the return, is, you guys, we have to be conservative. If our clients win, we win again and again and again and again. Last thing you ever want to see is your client lose money.
To that point, I mean, so you projected it would sell for $1,850. It sold for $2,000,004. You said.
Mm-hmm.
Do you typically pick a number? How do you sort of? How
See, I'm
conservative
typically
do you
not
go
that.
with
What is your name?
Adam.
Adam. I'm typically not that far off. Usually, what happens is it sells for my highest estimate, but not much over it. But it usually goes for the highest one. This right here, you guys, Manhattan Beach has taken such a tremendous, like, quantum leap forward in the last 3 and 4 years in their values. They just, right? So it just, this project got involved in the market, and good thing. I mean, the clients actually made good money. I mean, I'd be bummed out if these are good clients of mine. So everybody's happy, right? Now, let's look at this for a minute, though. At $275 a foot, let's look at cost of construction. Hang on a minute. Land acquisition, actual cost of construction. Okay, so you see the $1,375,000? That was the cost of construction at $275 a foot. Go to the next flyer, or the next page, please. At $225 a foot, the actual cost of construction was $1,125,000. So that was $200,000 in itself, that $50 a foot. So going from, you see where I'm saying right now, right? The previous slide right here, you guys, cost $1,125,000 to build that at $225 a foot. Go back to $275 a foot, Eric. That was $250,000 more to build it. So it actually cost $50 more a foot than the highest number, which was $325 a foot. So it actually cost, say, $1,600,000 to build, but they sold for, I already told you guys, the bump of the Hermosa Beach real estate market.
So you got lucky, kind of.
Fortunate. Yes.
I'm just curious, for examples like this, with the land acquisition cost, so usually when you buy, there's a house over there already, or is just an empty lot?
No, we're tearing down. We'll talk about a project that we currently today have under negotiations, and towards the end of it, and I'll share with you how that balances out if we end up. We're supposed to send the counter offer out.
So you're not.
Guys, we're realtors. We're all waiting for the counter offer to come. Okay, so you see that $50 a foot is a difference of $250,000 on the construction cost. So forward thinking, if you're thinking it's going to cost $275 a foot, okay, that's X. What if it cost me $50 more a foot? Well, you simply, with the spreadsheet, you simply insert it, but okay, it's going to be $250,000 more, and that's the difference of if you're making $700,000, that's reduces it to $500,000 or $450,000. Okay, let's go to the next one. Hermosa Beach. Okay, we did this one, $225 a foot. Eric, let's go to the next one. All right. So this right here, you guys, is an Excel spreadsheet that I put together, and it was actually furnished to me by one of the local banks. Then I put it into my own spreadsheet because they give you a hard copy, and I want to be able to put in numbers and manipulate, so on and so forth. So in a new construction project, this is every fee you're going to have. Just about. Just about. I don't want to say every, but just about. On a remodel or a flip, these are all the fees you're going to have. Permit fees, asbestos, framing, drywall. So this spreadsheet is good for any project you want to analyze, especially if you're going to buy it for yourself or your client. Run through the numbers. If you want me to email you the exact spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, and you guys could take my name off it and put your name on it and use it for your own benefit, give me your card or send me an email, and I will definitely follow up with you. Definitely.
There's copies up there as well, Dean, physical copies, if they want to get.
Okay, there's physical copies of it here, but like I said, if you want to, you could either create your own spreadsheet. If you want me to send one to you, I'm happy to, right? But this goes from architect to engineering to blueprints to city fees, plan check fees, cable wires, just everything you can imagine in a property. This will show you what it's gonna cost, so if you really wanna do a thorough analysis on it, right? Go to the next slide. Let's see. So somebody asked me how long this class was gonna be, and we're gonna be at it by 10:30. I don't know how long it's projected for, maybe 10:15, just to give you guys a heads up, okay? How long is the class usually? Does it say? You guys don't mind if we end early, do you? Just a little bit? All right. I always figure we always like to leave early, you know? Okay, you guys, so a thorough comparable analysis. I mentioned to you right now that I'm working on a tall, skinny negotiation over on in area 154. So let's think about this for a minute. If we can buy the property for $1,150,000, $1,000,001, they're 2,200 square feet. It's going to be $220 a foot to build. So 2,200 square feet, say 500 each house. Property's $1,000,001, 500 each house. That's 2.1. That market over there is over $1,500,000 each. We all have to agree on that, and if you want to debate it, I'm happy to debate it, right? But here's the exact comps that show why those homes are worth over $1,500,000. So it's easy for me, and this is exactly how I send it to my clients. One line printout, how many days on the market, how much cost per square foot, so on and so forth, attached by the thumbnail printout. And that gives them the information. They don't need 20 pages. They don't need the whole CMA report, you know, all that extra menage. They just want to get to the point, so they can leave early, right? Okay. So anybody have any questions on this? This fair enough over there? New homes are selling for over $1,500,000. Yes.
What's your typical time frame? Like you tell them, like, all right, we're gonna buy this home and sell it within.
What's that?
What's your typical time frame that you tell your clients in terms of buying a property and selling it?
Well,
because obviously, you know, the financial aspect of it changes if you're holding on to their money for like 5 years.
Okay, so this is the interesting part of that equation. The architect is really, really key to a development project, right? Because if an architect doesn't know what they're doing, it'll take them a year and a half to get it through the city, if they ever get it through. If the architect is very active in the city, then, you know, like we're projecting this right here, we'll be breaking ground within 5 to 6 months. Because our architect has proven time and time again that that's what it takes. So our projection is you're going to break ground within 6 months. Now, bless you. In Hermosa Beach, it's virtually impossible to break ground on anything in 6 months. Guys, the coffee was gone when I got here, so I'm just going to grab my cup real quick. Thank you, Jack. Bless you over there. You need a tissue?
I'm good, thank you.
No, it's beautiful.
What's the realistic time to break in Hermosa, you said?
A year.
A year.
8 months to a year. When we built at Hermosa Beach, we add 10% and we call it the Hermosa factor. It's just that simple. Yes?
And maybe you're gonna get into this a little bit later, but when we talk about building per square foot, and you're talking 220, is that essentially the land and how difficult that land is to build, plus the quality of materials? So, you know, when you're talking about a sales price of $1.5 million, usually the person walking in is just obviously expecting something incredibly nice, and every developer can be a little bit different in regards to the quality of materials versus, and again, all things being equal, maybe they all get it at the same cost.
You know what's interesting about that? What is your name?
Doug.
Doug, what's interesting about that is when you look at the comps per square foot, most, except for those ones that are just like off the charts nice, right?
Yeah.
The comps per square foot are mostly in the same sales range. Right, let me give you an example here. Hang on a minute, because I can barely see this. Okay, you guys, you see right here on the single line analysis, there's a cost per square foot right there. Sales cost. Now, I'm not going to name any builders because we all have a community that we all work together, but it's clear that everybody has a different level of quality. Doug, you just said that, right?
Yep.
Okay, if you look at, these are all good builders here, some better than others. If you look at the sales price and the cost per square foot, they're all variably the same. And I can't see it there, you guys, so tell me what you see there on the cost per square foot. What's the range?
660 to 830.
So what sold for $834 a foot? Why did that happen?
It's still
Active.
It's active, and I'll tell you why that happened. So you guys, I've been to that property. Glad it just came on the market a couple of days ago. Usually those tall skinnies, if you've been through them, and excuse me, I don't ever say tall skinny to my client, ever. Right? I say the San Francisco feel, the nice, you know. But those tall skinnies in general are 2 levels with 2 bedrooms downstairs, living room, kitchen, and master bedroom upstairs. That's the formula. And those homes usually are 2,000 square feet, 2,100 square feet. They reversed this plan on this property. They put the living room and the dining room and the family room downstairs and put accordion doors so it opens to the backyard. It's really a clever plan. Then the 3 bedrooms are upstairs. Very clever plan. I've never seen that over there. But in doing that, they only got 1,850 square feet. And that's why you see the 800 per square foot on the asking price.
I mean, it's not what I'm asking in regards to the asking price. I'm talking about the cost to build.
Yeah.
House.
Well, I think look, there's a developer who does a tremendous amount of business in North Redondo. We all know their name. They build for under $200 a foot, right? There's other builders in North Redondo that build for more than $200 a foot, $225 a foot. And I think the attention to detail is probably better on the one that's at $225 a foot. But my point is the level of, because this is something the developer has to ask themselves all the time. How high do we go on detail? Right? Because if you're going $225, $240 a foot, you know you can do it for $200 a foot, then you have to make those decisions. Now, in Manhattan Beach and Hermosa Beach, you're generally not going to be able to buy the fixtures and build at $200 a foot because they're expecting, you know, toilets, you guys. Toilets go for $79 to $1,000. Just a toilet. So if you pick $250 toilets and there's 5 bathrooms with a $1,000 toilet in the master bathroom, not everybody's doing that. But that's going to affect the cost per square foot from ground up.
So, but for flips, that cost per square foot goes down, correct?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that was an analysis for new construction. However, that Excel spreadsheet I showed you that had the 100 line items, that's a good one for flips. What in that line item do I have to do to this home? Now, if we have to add square footage on a flip, now that starts increasing the cost of everything, right? But generally on a flip, if you're not adding square footage, that's cookie cutter, right? But it's still hard to figure out, you know, you gotta, does it need a new kitchen, does it need new baths, does it need new stucco, does it need a new roof, there's just the whole variables, right? But you could use that, the first analysis, and actually, once you did the Excel spreadsheet that had the 100 line items, and you know how much it costs to do the flip now, if you will, then you can insert that into the Excel spreadsheets, because you know the number. You have the acquisition, you have the improvement, the city fees, all that kind of stuff, right? I'm going to share with you guys something that cost per square foot, there's a lot of changing that goes on in city government that affects the cost per square foot. And Redondo Beach had the most significant change last year that I've ever seen happen in my career. And most of the cities have what's called a Quimby fee. Quimby fee. Like, you know, there's school tax, that's a park and recreation. So if you're ever doing a remodel or a new home project and you see the word Quimby fee, that money goes to Parks and Rec. So here's how it used to work prior to January 1st of this year. Maybe January 1st of last year. No, January 1st of last year, before the new mayor came into town. If you were to tear down, like, say, a single-family home and build 3 on the property, you would pay $7,500 for the 2 new additional residences. Therefore, that project, your Quimby fee would be $15,000. January of 2018, they raised it to $25,000 per. So, same project. We haven't bought any plumbing yet or any breaking ground. Now, if you're tearing down 1 and you're building 3, that's a $50,000 fee your developer has to pay to the city of Redondo Beach instead of $15,000 the year before. So when I say cost of construction's gone up 30%, well, in Redondo Beach, just throw some of that in it. Right, so there's, so and what made me think of that is in the Excel spreadsheet, talks about city fees. So whenever you're doing a project, you can get your head around what that is, right? Okay, any question on the comps? I think one of the things I want to just bring out though is, we understood why that was at 800 a foot. All of the other ones were close. But the reason why that was 800 a foot was because it was 1850 square feet and the other ones were 2200 square feet. So that was the variable. Now, if I'm sending new projects to my clients, and that thing just came on the market, and they're bringing it up to me, and I know every detail about that property, it's pretty legit, right? So when they bring it up, I can tell them exactly why that's 800 bucks a foot, right? Okay, let's go to the next one. All right, so sometimes the best thing we can ever do is talk our client out of buying something, right? Or if we see an obstacle that's a pain in the rear, is say, guys, let's let somebody else have that pain in the rear. Because now when our competitor is dealing with that pain in the rear property, we're doing something easier, right? So let's think about, when I say look at the bigger picture, things that can go on that can affect your project. We had an offer on a property one time. Last year I sold a 200-lot townhome by Redondo High School on the north side of the school on the corner of Maria and Diamond. There was 2 detached contemporary homes. And during construction, the neighboring property came on the market, which is actually under development now. It was towards the end of the property. And somebody had bought it and it fell out of escrow, and then we checked it out. We were shocked. The soil was contaminated. There was an old oil well there. And we were like, think about it. We got 2 40 by 150 lots. How was ours not contaminated? We did soils checks on all of our property and it was not contaminated. But over the property line, that one was. So problem number one, it's okay. I mean, you just have to dig down 8 feet to take all the dirt out and recompact it. It's going to cost an extra $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 plus time, right? Problem number 2 was there's only one place for that driveway to go, which was in the alley. And the electric pole was right in the center of the lot. So as we're laying out the backyard, we're going, well, wait a minute. That electric pole, is it telephone pole or electric pole? Electric pole. That pole is an Edison pole. That pole is either going to encroach in the backyard or it's going to encroach in the driveway. And it can't encroach in the driveway, so it's going to encroach in the backyard, which means our finished product isn't going to have a backyard because we've got to do a cutout for the telephone pole. Right? So it was like, wow, those variables were too much to deal with. Now, on the flip side, the property that my client bought next door, there was also where the driveway was going to go. There was a telephone pole that was close to where the driveway went. And there was a guide wire that went into the driveway was going to go. So first reaction is, what do? You've got to move the pole because that, they got what's called a Susie wire. And the Susie one goes like that. So we didn't have to move the pole. We changed the stabilizing wire and saved some money. Then there was also another cost, like this was a corner lot, an expense that was thrown upon us. The curb didn't have a handicap parking. So the developer who was building on that corner got the honor of putting that handicap parking on the corner, right? Which is 15, 20 grand.
Handicap parking or
handicap? No, I'm sorry, handicap access. That was my bad. Handicap access, right? How does your development affect traffic? So I don't do a lot in Manhattan Beach. I've done some. And one of the main reasons, well, there's 2 main reasons. One is the cost of the investment and capital and all that kind of stuff. Everybody has their fields they want to play in, right? The other thing is, how do you build on 22nd and Bayside in Manhattan Beach or Hermosa Beach? I mean, it's a task that's too much for me. Right now, costs more to build because you have to figure out all those. I don't even know where to begin. It's already a big enough puzzle, but you can see that if you're going to do a project down there, you got to look at these logistics. where the worker's gonna park, how the materials get dropped off, what's going on here, right? Are there any environmental issues? Oh, is there any landmark trade issues? So does anybody here live in Hermosa Beach besides you? Anybody? You? So, me and a couple of people went in partners on a property across from the Comedy Magic Store on 10th and Hermosa Avenue 3.5 years ago. So we designed a 6,300 square foot commercial building. Catty corner, Hermosa, so you know Comedy Magic Store is on the northeast corner of 10th and Hermosa Avenue. This is the southwest corner. Original design was a 6,300 square foot commercial building, really nice, contemporary layout, really nice. And we submitted it to the city, and they said they had to do a historical review on the property. And they did a historical review. And the historical review said this is not a historical property. Good. But could be considered a historical resource. Difficult. What does that mean? Could be considered a historical resource. What that means is we have to get a new governmental agency involved called CEQA. Now, we bought it 3 years ago, so this is 37 years into my career. I've never heard of CEQA before. I've heard of them, but never dealt with them. CEQA, California Environmental Control Agency. Okay, quality agency. So we got involved with them, and ends up we either need to keep the home, original home, and develop something behind it, or do an environmental study, which is probably 150 grand in a year and so on. So we decided it was best for us to work with CEQA, work with the community, and come up with the best possible project for that community. Then we submitted keeping the single family home with a commercial building behind it, but it necessitated Hermosa Beach, if you don't have enough parking, you can do parking in lieu. 29,000 a parking spot. So we were gonna buy 10 parking spots, right? 290,000 added to the construction project. Problem was Hermosa Beach loved the project, didn't like giving up all the parking, right? So the project was turned down. So on June 17th, 3.5 years later, like someone said 6 months or a year, when do you break ground? 3.5 years later, we are proud to report that we're submitting to Hermosa Beach the first bed and breakfast in the beach cities in 50 years, right? Get the local community involved, local restaurants serving the people who are staying, really nice. So this is on their agenda June 17th. So 3.5 years we've been working on this, right? Knock on wood. If you're in Hermosa Beach and you want to support us, please give me a buzz and we would welcome your support. No, but it's probably the right thing for the community. We in fact talked about doing a bed and breakfast at the beginning of the project, because the Airbnb thing is like not legal, but it's a commercial property and it's zoned for that. So it probably turned out the right way, and it's going to be a very successful project down there. Just took a little bit of patience. So that was. Are there any landmark historic kind of stuff?
Do you know how to spell CEQA?
CEQA, California Environmental Quality Agency. Welcome. Okay, next one. Okay, so if you want to see what properties are zoned for, what you can build on certain properties, all of the cities have their maps they can go to, their websites you can go to. I'll give you an example. In Redondo Beach, you have R1, R2, and R3 properties. What's the difference? R1, you can build a single family. What's R1A? R1A is in the Golden Triangle, where the lots are 50 by 100. That R1A means you can split it and create 2 lots. So when you see those old homes go down and the 2 come up, that's because that's an R1A property, right? So now when you go, what's the difference between R2 and R3? Just because an R2 property says R2, it doesn't mean you can't be able to build 3 units on it. What it means, and don't quote me on the square footage, but I'm going to be within 50 feet, okay? On an R2 lot, you have to have at least 2,800 square foot of land for each unit. Right, which means your lot's got to be like 5,000 and change to get 2 units on there, two units on there. On an R3, you only need to have 2,400 square foot of land for each unit. So let's go to the lots along Grant Avenue in Redondo Beach. Those are all 50 by 150. you could build 3 on all of them. 2,400 square feet per unit of land mass is needed. So 2,400 times 3 is under that 7,500 square foot threshold. You guys get me on that? Right? So I see R3 lots in Redondo Beach, and I've seen a lot of these sell lately. I've actually sold a couple of my clients. R3 lots lately that have been selling for $850,000 to $950,000, and they're 5,000 square feet. So you could build 2 on that R3 lot. Now, if it was R2, 5,000 square feet, you need 2,800 square feet per unit to be able to build, so you can't do it. But if it's R3, 5,000 square feet, you only need 2,400 square feet. It might be 2,350. So now 2,400 times 2 is 4,800, and the lot has 5,000 square feet. So an R3 5,000 square foot lot allows you to build 2. An R2 5,000 square foot lot does not. Interesting, right? Okay, so any city you go into, you guys can get the data. I have to tell you, Lomita is very interesting. Because Lomita is sort of a case-by-case. You guys see why we never have new homes in Lomita? Or rarely? Because their development projects are case-by-case. So if you go in and buy a 25,000 square foot lot, they can tell you you should be able to do this. You may be able to do that. But it's mostly case-by-case, similar to Lawndale. That's why you don't see a lot of new projects in Lawndale. It's mostly case-by-case when you get over 2 units. There's a lot of 2 units. Okay.
And is the being unsure about that maybe you should, is that the reason why things aren't developed, because there's no certainty in what they can do?
Because all these guys who are doing the 200-lot townhomes in Redondo and Hermosa and Single, they don't know 100% certainty that if they design something within the code, they're going to get approved.
So why does Lomita and Lawndale do that? Is that by design and to keep their population?
I'm not sure. I know that all processes can be improved, so you know, I just it's a bummer because you see these lots in Lomita that are 20,000, 30,000 square feet large, and they only have 1 or 2 homes on it, right? Or maybe sometimes 3. So it's just, Lomita's a neat town. I saw a lot of duplexes and triplexes and 4plexes over there. It's a good investment area. But at some point, I think they have to get onto that development part of it. Okay, let's go to the next one. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask a random question. So would that imply that if there is that change in Lomita in the planning commission, does the value of properties in Lomita start to go up?
I don't. The only thing that I would correct there is, or that I would just change in saying it, because I'm actually, you guys, this is the first time, you know, this whole thing's been on Facebook Live. And I did that, it's the first time, because I figured that I have 3 grandkids now. And I wanted them to see one time when Grandpa's old that he can see, hey, Dad used to, you know. So I want to be accurate when I'm saying this because it's being recorded. I don't think it's the planning commission. I think planning commissions are following directives from city, what their codes are and stuff. So at somewhere, I think if Lomita got a little bit, and Lawndale, I had an 8-unit project ready to go together in Lawndale. And my developer backed out because they were afraid at the city meeting, because it's got to go to a city meeting before it can get approved. Whereas Redondo Beach, if you submit a 2 or 3 or 4 unit, it goes to planning commission, gets approved, then you do your structurals. Well, there that we were afraid that they might make us eliminate a unit and put a little park area in the property. And that unit, if that unit was $700,000 and they made us eliminate it, and we've already closed escrow on the property, just the whole dynamics change. So it'd be nice to see them have more concrete codes that allow more development to take place. Yes, Jack?
Yeah, one thing your association here is doing, with the Government Affairs Committee, and we're working with these cities to see if we can get some of this stuff lifted. And what ideally would be, we have continuity. So what you can do in Lawndale is similar to what you do, similar to the same what you can do in Hermosa Beach, et cetera. So we're working on it for you, but it's a slow process of going to city council and explaining why this is to their benefit. Higher homes means better property taxes, better people, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, that's, investors need to have certainty when they get into things, so, that's a difficulty.
Hey, Dave?
Yes.
Is that, so you hadn't completed the purchase, you were in your due diligence still when you talked to the city and all that stuff?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we offered a 60-day escrow, with the ability to extend an additional 60 or 90 days if we
Depending
need
on
to.
complications.
Yeah. Okay, this was just, you know, when I had the other outlier of sending your client information, you get them as much information as you can about the property, so they can make those, I like to call it, I want my client to make no-brainer decisions. If I give them the right information, they can make decisions rather quickly. They're sophisticated. Okay, go ahead. Looking at lots, you guys, when you're selling properties, and you want to get your head around what you're sending your client. And obviously, this information that I'm putting up here is readily available for us. But you just want to make sure that what the listing broker or what you're thinking is the actual facts are the actual facts, right? So check all that stuff out. Bless you. So this is, you know, I told you guys a little bit about R3 and R2 standards. They're actually on here in Redondo Beach, so you can see what the difference was. I sort of paraphrased what the numbers were. But all of the cities have access to this information. Okay, next one, Eric. All right, when I said watch out for possible issues that can come up on properties. So, if you work with some investors and you build their trust, that becomes really magical in our business. And in fact, if you're going to buy stuff and you know how to figure things out and look at things thoroughly, I sent a client of mine an investment over on Maria and Diamond again, and I mentioned to you guys about the Edison pole and about the drain, and there was a bus bench here, and there was a trash dispenser here at the bus bench. So before I sent that to my client, I drew all this stuff out and I wrote down possible concerns, right? So we can throw them on the table, right? And that way when they get all the information, I was able to say, guys, this project was golden. Here's a couple of the concerns. We need to make sure that guide wire is not the driveway. We need to make sure that the drain doesn't come into play for us in the future, because there was a city drain that goes up there. And all of the items, they were like, all right, cool, Dean. So, they're asking me to go check those things out, or the architect, no problem. And, but we bring up those points and we sort of identify them before we identify what problems there could be before we present it to our client, as best we can. Okay, go ahead. Okay, I thought I'd share for a moment the development process. This is just like development process made easy. And this is sort of interesting, guys. In 1998, I built my first 4-unit in Hermosa Beach. And interestingly enough, we penciled those out to sell for $300 a piece, and they sold for $450 a piece. And there was 4 of them. So for my first development project, it was like, wow, that was cool, right? But what I did was, and if you want to learn about a development project, anybody can do it. Pick one and go take photos of it once a week. Right, so I was involved in my own, I like calling it on-the-job training, right? So I would go there once a week and take pictures of my project. Next week, more pictures. Next week, more pictures. By the time the project was done 9 months later, I had it from grading to foundations to this, to that, to this, to that. And the best I could put it out to make it simple is, first thing that takes place is demolition. Once your project's approved, the city will let you demo. You don't need to have the actual approval for the structurals. Most cities don't necessitate that. You have to have your grading and soils. You have to have your soils report. That's usually done while you're buying the property. It only takes about a week to get it done, so make sure your soil's not contaminated. And off of the soils report, then you'll know how your grading's going to be. So you're going to go demo, grading.
Because grading can be a problem too, right?
Grading, pulling out dirt. Well, it's just, if you have a steep lot, if you're on a hillside, grading is such a different word. Bless you. If it's just a flat lot, it's simple, cookie cutter. It's just once those things, if it's high on the street and down on the back, that means you need sump pumps. So instantly when you see that, you're going, okay, grading's gonna be $75,000 more, I need sump pumps for both houses, there's an extra 50 grand. If it's like this, and it's high in the back and low on the street, now gravity takes its flow. No sump pumps are needed, the grading's just cookie cutter, because everything's cookie cutter, right? Demo, grading, foundations, framing, After the framing's up, they do all your electrical, plumbing, fire sprinklers, HVAC, all that stuff. After that's all in, city signs off. Once the city signs off on the roofs, they can install the drywall and the roof. Once the roof is put on, they set the finishes, the cabinets and all that kind of stuff. When that's done, they ask for final inspections. So that's pretty much how a construction project lays out. And when you see something framed up, and all of a sudden it looks like it's just staying still for 60 days. It's because this is taking place. The electrical, the plumbing, the wire, the fire sprinklers, although you only see one sub in there at one time, another one another time, but that's what's taking place when it looks like a project's on pause most of the time.
So-
When the wood starts looking a different color, then it's something else going on. Okay. Okay, let's go to the next one.
So, subcontractor.
Okay, pre-acquisition of a property, right? So when you're in your 14-day due diligence, usually when you're selling a property to a developer or to somebody on the fixer-upper arena, they're always gonna want 10 days due diligence, usually 14. A lot of builders that are good will do it in 10. And, I mean, when I hear people saying they'll close an escrow in 5 days, a developer, well, you might get tagged. You don't know what's under that dirt. You don't know the possible things that can come through that. So usually it's a 10 or 14-day due diligence period. Usually there's not loan contingencies and appraisal contingencies because there's usually another builder on a good deal that will give without that. But there's still that due diligence period, right? During that due diligence period, if it's a flip or if it's a new project, you need to confirm with an architect that you can do what you want. So this property in North Redondo, even though we know we can do it, architects already said, yeah, take 3 to 4 months. Architect meets with the city to conceptually say, hey, this is what I want to do. 2 contemporaries, 2 Mediterraneans, 2 Cape Cod. City says, yeah, that's good, begin, right? Architect completes design plan. It says structural and design, but actually the architect completes the design plan, not the structural plan, because you can submit it to the city without the structurals.
What's the difference?
Hermosa Beach is changing.
What's the difference?
Well, the structurals are all of the engineering behind it. And if the city, if you're submitting a 2-on-lot townhome and you don't know if it's approved yet, then why should you spend all the money, $10,000, engineering the whole project? You want to get the design element approved, then he'll do the structurals. Then you submit to the city for plan check. City comes back with corrections, always. So when you get an architect has corrections, it's like you can always find something, and they still don't find everything. Then you submit it back to the city, they give the final approval. Once you attain the approval, you start paying for permits, the school fees. You have to pay all of your city fees before you can pull the permit. Recycling fees, all that kind of stuff. It was interestingly enough, in 1998 when I started developing, there was no recycling fees. There was no recycling. It was tear it down and throw it away. Okay. Fees down here that I talked about, cities have. School fees, park fees, recycling fees, Department of Water and Power has a fee, county fees, city fees, demo fees, and building permit fees. Yes, Nick?
How careful are you about disclosing an off-market deal when you go into the city? Like if you have an address no one else knows about, and you're doing your due diligence at the city, just like what can be built.
Well, what's interesting is when you go for the over-the-counter information, if I'm in that situation, I don't write the address. I'll write Alberta, I'll write Irina. I don't put the exact address down there. It's a good question. Because you don't, it's like once you write it down, I would imagine some agents could go look at that list and see who's been there. Well, see who's been there that day and what kind of properties are on. Okay, let's go to the next one. I think we went over this. You're gonna look for the curve. Okay, so let's talk about this for a minute. We were putting a project together. We didn't get our offer accepted, but the church next to McDonald's in Redondo Beach came on the market for like $8 million. You could do 28 townhomes there. But while we were doing our due diligence, there were 2 curb cuts on Pacific Coast Highway we wanted to use. Caltrans said those have got to be abandoned. So the 2 curb cuts we saw on Pacific Coast Highway that we planned on using, we couldn't use. Right, so you just want to make sure that you're checking out everything you can think of, at least about a project. So lot slope, I mentioned to you a little bit about lot slope. If it's sloping downhill from the property line, and it costs you a lot more money to build than if it's sloping in the area of which gravity, carries things. Inaccurate records. There's inaccurate records all the time in the county and the city, and so just make sure that your records are accurate, that your agents often put inaccurate records online, so just be aware of that. Rain and weather, a lot of people like to figure out on a new project, what's the best time to break ground, right? Probably in November, December, January, February might be a lot of rain. Maybe February, March might be a good time, so people like to time stuff around that. Utility delays, that's interesting. And now it's like when you call up, this is interesting when you guys are selling brand new homes. Really interesting. So the cities give their final or certificate of occupancy before they release the gas meter. Because they give the certificate of occupancy, then they send the gas release to the gas company. And it usually takes 14 to 21 days for the gas meter to come. So although you have a certificate of occupancy for the house, and it's set to close, there's no gas meter coming for 14 to 21 days. But the buyer wants to close now, because they can, right? So if you're selling a new home, do you close after the gas meter's installed? Or do you close after the certificate of occupancy is issued? Generally, it comes in when the certificate of occupancy is issued. And generally, if you're a listing agent on new homes, there's a bit of a conversation about the gas meter somewhere through the process. Right? So you as the selling agent representing the buyer, think about that, because the gas meter's not coming for 2 weeks after the certificate of occupancy. So you close escrow after installation of gas meter or after certificate of occupancy? Just a question for you guys to think about when you're making an offer on your house. Surveys, okay, surveys and soils reports. Survey doesn't necessarily have to be done prior to close of escrow, right? It is what it is, 50 by 150, and give or take an inch, it's gonna be okay. The soils reports, right? Bless you. Until we saw that happen with the neighboring property, we never really asked for a soils report before the close. We figured you could build everywhere. Now that we saw that happen and it cost the builder an extra 125 grand to deal with that, we're always ordering a soils report right when we get our offer accepted. It can be done within NorCal does them, it could be done, NorCal Soils Engineer, just to throw that out there. They can get it done in a week, right, 10 days, and you want that information.
How much does it cost usually?
I don't know, $500 maybe.
Is it per size of it or just?
No, yeah, they have to drill a certain amount of holes. If you called up NorCal and said your name was given to me today, and if you saw a lot, they'll give you a quote on it. They're cool. Okay, go to the next one.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
How about you're buying a big lot, house on it already, and they don't plan on developing anytime soon. They're just like, oh, we'll add on. Do you recommend having a soils report done on those type of places? Because it's like,
if they don't,
yeah, if they decide, well, you know what, maybe we'll build later on.
I would say that in the idea of buyer beware, get the most information you can. Probably I would say, yeah, I would at a minimum say, look, it's a large property, you might develop it in the future. You may want to get a soils report to make sure there's no problem with the soil. It's not, and what I'm seeing as I'm saying this, I'm seeing another report coming up in the residential market, right? Should those be done? Should they not be done? It's not expensive to do a soils report. So I'm gonna say that if I put on my projector, I'm gonna say soils report would probably become like a termite report in the near future. But it's still gonna be the buyer's option. It's for the agents to be buyer beware, right? But it's a very good question. I mean, those soils reports are very important. Yes, Nick?
Yeah, so as a realtor, the internet's changed our job, right? I mean, there's a lot of internet sites, but it seems like construction hasn't changed really at all. Like, if anything, it's gotten more complicated, and it hasn't gotten easier, has it?
Nick, you know what? I was thinking about that exact thing when I was coming up here. Being involved in real estate ownership of a company, I started Bayside Properties in 1996, so I've been involved with ownership of my companies for 25 years. And I always hear the agents talk about how the internet is changing the way things are done. I hear some agents talk very fearful of that. And I see other agents use that to their benefit, right? Now, that being said, there is no doubt in my mind that real estate is changing a bit. And home sales are gonna change. Home sales are gonna change a bit, right? And we have to be able to embrace it, enjoy it, and go with it, right? Investment real estate. I don't think that's gonna change, and that's why I brought this up. You said just a minute ago that that hasn't changed much. And our investors, they need some, they're not gonna go on a computer and say, hey, I'm spending $1.5 million for that, right? Or, you know, they're not. So the investors, they really will need your critical input, right? So to that point, I've embraced the changes that are coming along in real estate, right? One of the things that I think we're seeing right now is the I-sell. People buying all that kind of stuff on that. My personal opinion, and I think my opinion's right, is that those are lead generators for companies.
Yeah, they are.
Right? You see the Remaxes, the Kellers, and all these. My company even got into it. I just advertised in digs. We buy property in 10 days, save on commissions. I mean, to me, I embrace it. Right? It's like, why not embrace it? Right? Because it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And I don't think Amazon's gotten into real estate, but you guys want to hear a curveball? Let's see when Amazon gets into real estate. Just saying, right? So, but it's okay. I mean, real estate, I think about this often. Like, 1979, I sold my first house in Hawthorne, $43,000. Sold my first house in Redondo Beach, $60,000. And I sold a house in Inglewood, $12,000. I had 3 sales that year. My commission on the $12,000 house was 3%. What's that, $360? You guys feeling that? $360. And I had to give my broker, which was my father, a loving 40%. So I walked away with $200. And then the $43,000 house, 3% commission, that was $1,200. And my father got 30% because I had closed my second deal. And still though, I got like $700. So now we close a $2.5 million house. If you're getting 2.5%, which used to be 3%, if you're getting 2.5%, $2.5 million is $70,000. If you're getting 2%, it's $50,000. If you're getting 1%, it's $40,000. 1.5% is $40,000. So is there an evolution coming? A little bit, yeah. Because technology's here to stay and it's good. It's embrace it, you guys. But in our business, if we figure out how to sell 2 or 3 or 4 properties a month, doesn't matter. None of that matters. Be of service to your clients. Be of service to our investors. Just be the best professional and it will sort itself out. And in fact, people have been charging lesser commissions for as long as I've been in this business. It was just not talked about as much. And now it's openly all over on the internet and whatnot. So I'm just going to say, embrace our business, use our tools that we have with us, and you know, real estate is just an amazing, amazing career to be in. Now, it's difficult if you're not doing a lot of real estate production. And if you, I'm not going to say any company in general because most of the companies are the same, if you look at the average amount of transactions per agent annually for any company, it's about 2 transactions a year. That's the average. That doesn't support my habits. I like to travel, I like to put my kids through college, I like to do all this stuff. But if we can figure out how to do 2 a month instead of 2 a year, or 2 or 3 or 4 a month, then this is where, you know, on the class I decided to have for investors, investors love real estate, they understand it, they want to buy it, and they want to deal with someone who's very professional that can bring them a lot of opportunities. So somehow let's get ourselves within that, and then, you know, the business is just beautiful. I mean, I can't imagine really doing anything else. I mean, I wanted to be a rock and roll star when I was a teenager, but I can see that that wasn't going to happen, so the real estate's been the next best thing. Okay, let's talk about joint ventures and partnerships and seller financing, trades, and performance fees for a minute. All right, There's a saying that your real estate transaction, your next transaction is 3 feet in front of you. And I truly believe in that, guys, right? So, in fact, I gave this class last year. Someone came up to me afterwards and we did a real estate transaction within 3 days, right? So, your real estate transaction is like right in front of you. And I mentioned that if you don't have investors, look at some realtors who are investors and use them as your investors until you find another investor, because they'll work something with you all day long, right? Joint ventures. I'm on Facebook Live here, so. On a joint venture, there's some office condos on Hawthorne Boulevard, 25550 Hawthorne Boulevard. And me and a partner of mine bought it on a joint venture together, right? It was easier for us to buy it together than it was to do it apart. There was 4,500 square feet. We bought it for $1.2 million. There was 7 APNs within the 4,500 square feet. We built 88 lineal feet of wall space, brought in separate meters. Now we had 3 units at 1,500 square foot each, instead of 1 unit at 4,500 square foot each. The market was $500 a foot for those units. We bought them at $260 a foot. So because it was like too much for 1 or 2 people to take on, get a little group of people you know and say, hey, let's do this. I mean, if somebody came up to me and said, I have an investment opportunity, and they spelled it out, I'd say, okay, let's do it, right? I mean, so just remember, you guys, if you don't have that investor there in front of you, if you do have the investor, then having strategic conversations about presenting offers and all that kind of stuff, we'll just dab on that for a couple minutes. Partnerships, a lot of property owners, they like to go on partners with sophisticated people because they don't want to sell their property, they want to realize the upside from their property. I gave an example. I sold a 3-unit site in Redondo Beach a couple years ago on Vanderbilt and Perkins. The lady owned the property for 60 years. We bought the property for $749. Now this is when the market was a little less. Bought the property for $749. Gave her the front unit for $750. And then we kept the back 2 units and built them and sold them. So we partnership with her. She got a brand new home with an elevator. It was a vacant lot for 40 years. So that was like, I don't want to sell it, but I want to do something. So we worked out something clever for her. Seller financing. There was another project. I was involved with a 6-unit on Emerald and Prospect. 6 beautiful contemporary homes right across the street from Paris, or up the street from Paris Elementary. Some of you guys probably saw them. We had the seller, it was $1.3 million for that property, and we had the seller take 50% down. They carried 50% of the financing. We gave them an attractive interest rate to get them to do that. And then we ended up building 6 homes because they carried the financing, everybody won, everybody was happy, right? Trades, so any new construction that I have up for sale, we'll always take trades, right? If somebody wants to sell a property to buy a new home because the builder doesn't want to take a trade, we'd consider making an offer for the right price. So trades are an interesting conversation. And then performance deeds, very clever, right? So who in here knows what a performance deed is? Isn't that interesting, right? So I'm having a little chuckle because I didn't know how the worst market in my career was going to be something that I learned from and would flourish me business for many years to come. So back when the interest rates were 11, 12, 13, 14%, the only people that were selling homes were people who would, like owners that would carry the financing, owners that would do an all-inclusive trust deed. And what an all-inclusive trust deed is, if you have a first trust deed and a second trust deed, you wrap them both together. Maybe the seller has a little equity. Now you have one all-inclusive deed tying them all together, right? Land contracts, performance deeds. So watch this. One of my clients bought a home in San Francisco, built a home in San Francisco about 8 years ago, 9 years ago. And they've been a client of mine for a long time. Really, really good people. They interviewed a few brokers up there, and Kelly called me up and said, Dean, I'm not feeling it. I want you to sell our property for us. I'm in Redondo Beach. They're in San Francisco. $5.4 million house, right? Very interesting house. And so I talked to them about, guys, I think the way we're gonna get our price is go outside of the box, and let's deal with some of these entrepreneurs up here and offer to carry the financing for the entrepreneurs on a land contract, which means owner financing. Owner only owed $800,000 of the property. Property's worth $5.4 million. We had a buyer come in and put $500,000 down. He actually bought it for closer to $5 million. Put $500,000 down, and the owner carried the $4.6 million, right? At 5% interest. So they have revenue coming in. We got the price because the entrepreneur didn't have to go to the bank to get the financing. In fact, he bought it with 10% down, right? So now we have this land contract. And the buyer and seller agreed that they didn't want to record the land contract because it could ignite certain things, due on sale clauses, certain things like that, right? So what I told them is, now there's two attorneys representing both parties. I said, guys, the solution to this is we record a performance deed and attach the land contract to the performance deed. And the attorney said, I'd never heard of a performance deed before. And I took that as a real compliment. I really did. And I said, well, let me explain it to you, right? And I explained it to him, and he went and did his research, and he called me back up, and he goes, I get it, right? So what they did is they did the transaction. They recorded the performance deed. Now let me go into performance deed for a minute. We can do things with deeds. We can convey title, we can secure money, and we can secure agreements. You change title with a grant deed, a quitclaim deed, one of those type of deeds. You secure money with a trust deed, and you secure agreements with a performance deed. So Sean, if you and I go into a partnership and we have an agreement, we want to document it, we want to record it against the property, we do the performance deed, and we attach our agreement to the performance deed. Everybody learned something today, huh? Who knows what a performance deed is? Come on, no, all you guys' hands got to go up now. Okay, but a performance deed is when you do a partnership with a property owner, how do you monument that agreement with the property owner? With a performance deed. It's recorded. It's not about money, it's about an agreement. That's what we did. The lady who I told you got the house, we put that in the performance deed. You get the front house, we're selling the back houses. When the project's done, we release the front house to you. Beautiful. My client bought it for $749, sold it to her for $750. How much money did we have to come in to close the escrow? $1,000. It was clever. The seller actually came up with the money to pay the commission. Very good. Okay, let's go to the next one. We're almost done, guys. Yes?
Quick question on the performance fee. Does that trigger a property tax increase? Or can you?
So, and that's a wonderful question. No, I don't believe it does. However, what we did was we gave the difference in the property tax assessment, what it would have been. We gave it to the buyer and said, if they reassess your property, we've already given you the money. And when you exercise the land contract and you pay off a performance deed, that's probably when you're going to get reassessed. We've already given you the money. So we accounted for that situation, even though I don't think it'll happen. Right? Okay, you guys, it is 10:32. We're still going to get out of here in 13 minutes, okay? Yes?
But at that time, a lot of even the local attorneys would talk the real estate brokers out of land contracts and performance deeds, saying that it didn't protect the seller as well.
You know what, they encouraged it, and because I knew about it, the conversation was able to surface, and then the transaction went together. Okay, you guys, so I'm just going to go through this. Offers on, whether you're buying a flip, whatever, if you're representing an investor, I want to talk to you guys about this for a minute. The buyers always have control. Always, 100% of the time. So my investors know that the paper, and I make it clear to them, the offer's not worth the paper it's written on. It only commits you if we get an agreement price, right? And then it only commits you if you approve the inspections. But it commits the seller 100%, right? So if you let your investors know that this is my attitude about it, it's not worth the paper it's written on, let's see if we're giving ourselves a chance, then my investors feel comfortable with that, because they don't want to go, oh, Dean, we don't want to buy it. Like, I know we may not buy it when we're writing the offer, But again, if we think it's a good opportunity, let's give ourselves a chance to say no, is what I like to say. You don't do that unless you write the offer, right? So make your offer strong. There shouldn't be loan contingencies in your offer. In a softer market, possibly, if it's the only way you can write your offer with a loan contingency, then write it, right? You're always gonna write it. But most of the builders are not having loan contingencies, and the people who are doing flips, they're not having it. Construction loans cannot be financed until plans are approved by the city. So if your client is gonna get a construction loan, the construction lender is not gonna put the money up until the city approves the plans. If that takes 6 months, and the seller wants to close escrow in 30 days, where does the money come from? Right, so think that through a little bit, right? Developers in beach cities, you see the developers down here, like when there's a single family on the property, a lot of developers go in and get a non-owner occupied loan, 25, 30% down. There's a house on the property, they're gonna tear it down and what? Right, so a non-owner occupied loan with 30% down is like, okay, you're gonna have your carrying cost, but you still don't have a loan contingency, but at least if you wanna get financing, that's what you're gonna do. If the property's being financed by a construction loan, money is released in stages. So when somebody gets a construction loan, they just don't give you $1.3 million up front. When the foundations are done, they approve it and they release that money. The framing's done, they approve it, they release the money. I learned a really interesting lesson when I did my first project. The bank wouldn't release the money for the appliances until they were installed. So you've got 4 houses, $15,000 for each house. $60,000. I got in the, when I was younger then too, I was like, I got in the bank, I go, guys, I borrowed the money from you. I don't have $60,000 for the appliances. You got the $60,000 for them. So I had to work something out with Pacific Sales at the time, and I said, guys, look, I'm gonna give you a check. Don't cash my check. Wait till the money comes, right? So it was a cluster jam, but think about that. If the money's not coming until something's installed, how's it getting installed? Okay, the last thing on here, I talked to you guys about money. So value mortgage, I want to talk about this private financing that I work with. I have access to private funds, of which I'm actually the underwriter, 95%. So with all the real estate sales I talk about, I've only talked to a couple agents in here about the private funds I have available, right, through value mortgage. We can close escrows from $300,000 to $5 million in 10 days. Right? Plans don't need to be approved, there needs to be equity. When we purchased the property on Hawthorne Boulevard, we used the Hawthorne Boulevard property, we used one of our other properties that were free and clear, and we came up with no money. Zero to do the investment. So they can do cross-collateralization. So if you have a client that's got 1 or 2 properties and sees a good opportunity, you can literally do it with no money or with very, little down if they have that ability to work. So if you, and because the construction loans can't close until the plans are done, where's that bridge money at, right? And that's where, for myself, my clients and myself use this bridge money more than you guys could know. I mean, how do I do the volume that I do? You've got to have the access to the money, and the banks want to know everything about all your kids, your grandkids. It's crazy with the bank. So if value mortgage, or if I could be any assistance with that, my wife has the NMLS. I'm actually the underwriter. I'm a partner in value mortgage, but good funds available. One time I had a guy who wanted to buy a $3 million apartment building. He said it was worth 4.5. They had to close in 10 days. And he had 2 other apartment buildings he owned. So what we did is we took the building he wanted to buy, we gave him the $3 million, and we cross-collateralized the other 2 buildings to give him a chance to refinance the one he was buying and pay the private money on it. The rate was 8.9%. There was a couple points involved, but he got to make a lot of money. So financing, we have that private party financing if that helps for anybody. Okay, let's go to the next one. I think we're done. Oh, so this is the spreadsheet, you guys, where I wanted you guys to see a difference on a current on a real life situation. The Hermosa Beach property, projected $275 a foot. It actually cost $320, $325 a foot to build. So, but projected $1,850,000 sales price, actually sold for the 2.4 sales price. So even though the cost of construction went up immensely, so did the value, so did the profit numbers. That was pretty cool. Right, so these are nice to look at when you give these to every investor. If they're saying they're not making money, you can come back and go, well, this is what we projected, and it looked like it was pretty good to me. Right, so, okay, let's go to the next one.
What do you learn from that in regards to your projections and from trends, 275, 320, and how you look at the next project?
Well, what I learned from that, honestly, is I am I'm not the developer, I'm the broker, and I'm giving them ranges. It's up to them to meet with their architects. See, like, when you're engineering something, we're not in all that. That's their development team with their engineers. Now, when I went to 225 to 275 a foot, everybody thought that would happen, but we didn't anticipate a 25% increase in material. So that's really was the main player in throwing that thing up. Yes?
Are there public data available for construction cost per square foot?
Not really.
For comparative?
No, you're just, I mean, that spreadsheet that I put in there, the 109 item spreadsheet, that right there is going to give you, if you're going to have a contract, let me say this, let's say you want to have a contractor bid a project. What I do is give them that sheet, right there. And say, I want my bid on this. Because if you're going to have 2 or 3 people bid something, 3 contractors are going to come in with their own bid sheets. I want to compare apples to apples.
Right.
So if I'm going to bid something, I'm saying, guys, I want your bid, and would you please bid it on this? That way I can compare apples to apples. Any other questions? We're good?
Yeah.
All right, if anybody needs one of those spreadsheets sent to you, if you have any real estate opportunities you'd like to talk to me about in the future, please keep my information, and more importantly, thanks for coming today. Appreciate it.
Want to say hi to Facebook, Dean? Got plenty of people tuning in.
Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Have a good day.